What is up, guys? Welcome back to Streets Ahead, carrying on our live play at 25 and L. So we start with the cold call with King Queen against 2.5x, flop, top pair, good kicker. Definitely some interaction on this texture. Villain sizing is not super large, around about half pot. Probably could even have some check raises in here, actually. In fact, let's go for that. Especially against a small sizing, we're supposed to raise more. I think he's going to 3-bet a lot of 2-pair and Jack-9 in sets if he has them. So generally a smooth call is pretty good for us. It's more kind of like Queen Jack, 10 Jack, 8-9 region. 10-8 we open raise. Looks like something that could be strong enough to check raise. We actually have the double gutter plus flush draw here. So we're going to go for the check raise as the PFR. We are a bit dominated with some of the outs. And one of the things that we have to do on flush completing is size down anyway. So we're going to kind of rep that we didn't really like the card that much. Hopefully we don't catch the fourth club on the river. And probably one of those spots where it's pretty good to underbet, make it look like we're not that interested. We'll play bet call, obviously. Villain could still value raise some of his straights if he thinks, hey, this guy never has a flush. He's just bet quarter pot on the river. I'm going to raise my straight now for thin value. That kind of stuff's good. Maybe he thinks that he can buy the pot if he has a bluff. We don't look too interested. Plus, it coincides with theory that generally says that if a big draw is getting there on the turn, often you're going to be using a small sizing. And then on top of that, we have the 10 high flush. So it's not even like the nuts anyway. So obviously, okay, let's just take a quick look at this. I think I'll just let this one go OOP. So we open raise the ace-3. Bet or check's fine. Just need to sit out after this hand temporarily. Oh, it's 3-way. I actually missed that. Basically, with this network, if you can see the HUD, it means they're still involved in the hand. This is definitely fine for a delayed c-bet 3-way. We have ace-high, which could be good, and we picked up the gutter as well. It's a pretty nice spot for a delayed c-bet. This guy check raises. I don't really know what that's about. But he's 54 hands, 11 VPIP, so I'll just tend towards giving him credit. All right, back to the action. Standard folds on both tables. Ace-10. Yeah, you can just about open this from UTG. It's one of the things that players have realized in more recent times. We used to think it was 13 to 14% RFI from UTG. Was GTO correct? We now know it's more like 18%. Face some in-raise with the ace-5. We flop a mid-pair on the 6-4-5, so we're at least sticking around for the flop. Here we will lead. It's mostly a protection lead. 6-deuce. Okay, we'll give a little bit of respect to the red tag. But I don't like to fold a lot against min-raises. But it is kind of more the suited side of the grid that's supposed to defend. It's almost like any two suited against the button min-raise from the big blind. I think we will go for the 3-bet here with the jacks. Big blind behind should be a nit. He shouldn't give us any problems, so this is this is not good. Let's put it that way. I think I'll just let him have this one. Like, realistically, it's probably queens plus. I don't even know if this profile does this with ace-king. The pot's fairly dry. We've only invested 10 big blinds. So although jacks does stack off a lot pre-flop, he doesn't want to stack off against a cold 5-bet generally, because you're investing 90 into a pot of 200. So it means you need 45 equity. And given that you're pretty crushed against stuff like queens plus, it's pretty tough to have the required equity for calling to be correct there. The pot's just too dry, basically. It's one thing if you've already invested a 4-bet, then you only need like 37.5 equity. The 8-4 on table 2 was because there was a nit. 10 jack we're going to play with 3-bet. This guy has played quite a few hands so far. He's only got 15, but he's played half of them. So let's think about this. Decide to fire a continuation bet just because it's a bit vulnerable, but you could also just as easily play it as a check. You know, a jack is not bad on the turn, gives us 2 pair. Queen's not bad, gives us COESD. But then could also be a king or an ace, which we don't want. Let's just go for smaller c-bet with the ace-king just because it's a recreational profile. The ace-9 will fold because it's a nit. Yeah, good things can happen if you play slightly larger pots against recreationals. Not the best river. I think I'll go for thin value anyway. It's one of those spots where you can still lose. You know, you're going to lose a decent amount, but look at that, Jack 7. So obviously that call is not very good, but it's a recreational player. So that's why you have to go for the thin value, despite the fact that he's sometimes going to have river 2-pair or a straight. Remember, a value bet doesn't need to be good all of the time. Value bets are allowed to lose a lot when they get called. I think I'm just going to try and play a small pot here. I don't really want to squeeze with the nit involved, but I also don't want to fold when I'm getting such a good price. So let's just see if we can play a smallish pot with our ace-jack. It's not vulnerable, so we're going to check to the PFR nit, see what he does. He checks, so we're probably okay against him. And if button does have an ace, we're slightly more likely to have him out kicked because he would 3-bet ace-queen pre. It's a little bit weird that the nit's playing check call. I'm not sure what that's about. Could be some kind of slow play / trap line. So we're not fully involved in this pot right now. Something feels a little bit off. I don't fold big blind to small blind min raise, even if it's from a reg profile. I guess we'll just go for a smallish value bet. Nick calls. Okay, we have a gut shot on table 2. This guy check back is tanking like he's going to raise or something. We'll go for the delayed float bet with the jack deuce. Okay, that's fine. So just running a bluff on table 2. I like some of the delayed float lines now. I think regs are a little bit less equipped to understand how to deal with them. You know, a lot of regs are actually setting traps now against the turn float bet, but they don't really have delayed turn float bet on their radar. So it's just about being one small step ahead of the average reg as well in terms of just taking things one street further than they're used to. So in the past, I would have played that gut shot with turn float river follow up, whereas now I might still sometimes do that, but I like the delayed float line. I'm going to play here just because the price is very good. This guy looks a bit tight so far. And for that reason, I don't think we need to do too much on 6 deuce deuce. It's not really what we were looking for. Let's see if we can play cheapish pot in position against the recreational profile as well. I have him marked as a green tag at the moment, but he is a little bit tight, so he's not your typical green tag. Sometimes I actually mark these guys with dark green, so it's definitely a recreational, but he's also not very loose or splashy, so we give him a dark green. We still kind of want to play against him, but it's not as profitable as playing against a green tag who has a 30 VPIP, for example. The range is simply not as wide and therefore not as profitable. So we flop bottom pair 3-way. We'd like to get quite a bit of protection here. So I'll size up slightly larger than normal. With 2 coolers though, we're not in great shape. We're up against higher pairs, combo draws, big draws with overcards as well. That's kind of what I mean by combo draws as well. Better to just give up. The combined equity is too much. We could always like river a 5 or an ace. You know, high possibility someone has trip 9s here or a jack that they're not folding. So, and if they have busted draws, we're going to win anyway, right? So let's just check back. So one of them has the busted draw, one of them's got the jack X. So I don't think we're getting a bluff through there. Jacks we're going to play. Jack 6 we defend because it's the min raise. Like I said, I'm not really inclined to fold big blind versus small blind min raise. We have garbage though. When my hand gets really trashy, I probably play the river 1-bet line, so I'd probably just check this down and launch a small bluff from the river. King 8 is going to be playable. Button is also a nit, so hopefully it won't give us too much trouble. I say the moment that he 3-bets us. Ace 10, we'll play a 3-way pot here. I'm going to just assume that he has something just based on his stats, and I don't really want to play this OOP. The price is obviously very good, but it's just not going to have the right playability against the tight range. It's just going to be too easy to be dominated. It's just not the right spot for it. And I don't think he's getting out of line. It's not like he's doing that a lot or anything. So table 2, we have the nit in the big blind. So we're just going to open raise a bit wider than usual. Flop the top pair, which is nice. I think we can get 2 streets here. I think bet check is the idea. I suppose you could sometimes have us outkicked. The 10 is not great, so I'd like to size down. If you have a look at theory, it starts doing quite a lot of checking here, but I'm going to see if I can get a small bet through, and river's just going to go check, check, hopefully. If he donks, he probably just has it. He probably just hit runner on a flush. All right, nice. So apparently we're playing with 51 VPIP so far. I don't know if that's really accurate. 3-bet 17. So I definitely have suspicions about that. I did check how the 3-bet stat was calculated, but everything looked okay. Like the calculation seemed to be fine. It looked like it was legit, but just because they tell you how they've done the calculation doesn't mean they've actually performed the calculation correctly. And all I can tell you, these numbers don't really correlate to anything that I've really seen before, aside from an obvious bot ring at GG. And obviously this Vang poker is actually somehow descendant from GG. There are stories of disgruntled employees that decided they were going to do their own thing and stole a bunch of the code base. I don't know the full story. That's just a rumor. But it could be the same kind of bots are operating. Maybe their bots are just plug and play, or maybe it's house bots, right? Did I not open raise with the aces? I must have limped. I must have limped by accident. I like to lead the 5-7 3-way. We have the flush draw and we have the pair, so we got some outs. 2 callers, 7 of clubs. This could be good for either of them. And we're just going to go for 2 streets here. I won't overbet just because we can sometimes be dominated by higher pairs. Not really too often, but sometimes be like a queen 7 or something. I don't feel comfortable value betting this 3-way. I don't even feel that comfortable calling here, but yeah, I think I'm going to call. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It mostly stemmed from a misclick initially, which I tried to open 3x, and then next thing I know, I'm in a 3 big blind pot. But I think the river call is still correct, either way. You know, at the very least, we also have a blocker to the flush as well, and that's kind of a weird way to play a flush. It's not that likely he necessarily has it. I think we're still probably an underdog calling the river, but I think we get the right price. So we need something like 20% equity to make the call. I think we've got that very easily. 7-4 is bricked, so I will fall to the 1/3 c-bet from villain. 6 is standard UTG open raise. We're in a 4-way pot. Ace, Queen, 9, not really too much we're interested in doing here. It's a 4-way pot, so mostly need at least an ace or an OESD or a flush draw to be even remotely interested in this. Not going to stab into a 4-way pot on the turn with pocket pair. Doesn't even improve very well, so mostly game over here. This guy overbets, so that's a fairly strong line, I guess, into a 4-way pot. Ace 3 might be playable. Let's get a green tag on this guy just because he doesn't have the full stack. We're going to 3-bet, trying to initiate heads up pot. This guy in the big blind, also green tag, potentially pick up the pot pre. That is completely fine. This guy, let's get a green tag on him. He's also short, and as a result, we're going to peel against the min raise. Yes, it's pretty wide, but price is very good, and we're here to play against recreational players. I was probably just going to give up and not probe because of the 3 Broadway texture. When I turn the 2, I think I'll stab once at it, but I'm not going to double barrel this because there's just too many ways you can have either a pair or 2 pair, and now he can even have the Broadway straight. Remember, he's open UTG. He's going to be a slightly more Broadway dense opponent at this point. So you don't generally want to be too aggressive for triple Broadway textures against the aggressor. So it would have been a give up. The only reason I didn't give up is maybe we've got an extra 10% equity because now we have 2 pair trip outs. And, you know, he still has a folding range. It's not like he never folds just because it's triple Broadway, but it's not the ideal spot to be attacking. So other textures, you might just be able to probe and follow up, even if you don't really have much equity, but not the triple Broadway. Obviously, that's mostly good for the PFR. And they can also have some well-protected stuff they like to check as well. You know, pair plus gutter, that kind of stuff, where they check back the flop, but they're just not really going anywhere on the turn and river most of the time. Let's be a little bit over aggro here. We've got 2 nits in the blind, so let's see what we can do. 8-7-6. Mid-range, good for the cold caller. We have the low end of the gutter, so we don't have really pot growth incentives. So we check back, but if villain checks again, we're hoping to win this with decent frequency at least. 10-9 offsuit we will play. It's kind of fringe from the cutoff. Big blind defends. A7-5. Guess you could have some C-bets in here just because of the texture and the reg profile. We don't have any folding stats, however. I think I'll play as a check versus unknown. We turn the OESD. Worth noting that it's a 3/4 probe, so that's a little bit larger than normal. We're not going to go anywhere with that OESD just yet. We brick on the river. And I think as a result of the sizing, I'm not going to bluff raise here. And the other thing is, it's not quite late position. It's kind of cutoff formation is actually the expression that I use. So much better to bluff raise on the button, but cutoff formation against 2 size ups for probe and follow up feels like it's maybe not quite the right spot for it. Looks like he just has an ace and might not be folding too much. So this is possible SNG opportunity. So we find the flop, check the turn with no equity, river, diamond completes, seeing if we can push our opponent off his holding. Probably has some kind of mid-strength showdown value. So we pick it up with the SNG bluff there on table 1. This is going to be an any 2 cards open spot on table 2. This guy's playing 14 VPIP. Ace 10, can open that from UTG, as we mentioned earlier on in Streets Ahead. Queen 8, again, we have the recreational player in the big blind. Let's play here. Mid-range, 3-way, 1 card gutter with the Ace 10. Probably just play this as a check. We have the 8. We don't want to bet 1/3. We don't want to bet too large either. But we want to get some protection. So probably middling sizing on the 6-7-8 just for protection. I think delayed c-bet on the king is completely fine. Plus we have a bit of backup. You know, we have the ace high. We've got the gut shot. We get called in this case. I think I'll just give up. It was 3-way on the turn. Plus, you know, his slightly weaker hands that we're calling, that maybe chose not to lead the flop, are possibly going to be connected with that jack as well. So I think there's better spots for it. I 2-barrel bluff very aggressively in general, but I don't 2-barrel bluff in every spot. And I do rely somewhat on intuition for when to fire and when to not fire. 5-4 is a fold against a 3x, but we've got this guy marked as a green tag. Blind versus blind. Let's see what we can do. Against these 75%, we'll just give up directly. We don't have the right type of equity there. Yeah, it says 48 VPIP. I don't know if I really believe that though. I mean, I do often have low 30s for VPIP, but I don't have 50 for VPIP. That's kind of insane. There's no way I'm playing 1 in every 2 hands, right? 6-5 is going to be a fold against the MP min raise. Jack deuce, easy fold. King 4, easy fold. See if we can lower that VPIP a bit. Aces, so this time we have the solid 3 big blinds open. Of course, we get no action. Still better than playing a 3-way limped pot and to the flush. To be fair, that guy had a queen jack of clubs in the hand where we lost the aces, so he's probably entering the pot against the 3x as well. And he's not folding the flop with the flush draw. And we're possibly still barreling, given that we have the nut flush to go with that overpair. So put everything together. We may have even saved money by misclicking pre-flop, because it's not like he's folding. Table 1, we go with the 3-bet against a small blind open with ace-jack. This is the kind of hand that should peel against a 4-bet as well, if he does re-raise. Gone are the days where you can just fold a lot to 4-bets. I mean, there are some guys that are way too tight, but you have to develop some kind of default flatting range against 4-bets. You can't just fold a bunch against people's 4-bets like you could maybe do 5-10 years ago. You have to have at least an okay constructed flatting range against the 4-bet. And you have to know how to play in 4-bet pots as well. Let's take a look at this guy's ATS. Look at that, 100 ATS. And we have an offsuit king blind versus blind. So I'm going to just take my shot here. All right, back to the action. Have to sit out a few times. This is why I like fast format, because there's no pressure to really do anything. Queen Jack. Again, we have the green tag on villain, so we're going to play this from the small blind. This looks like a good spot for a check defend. The ace-3 will fold, so we're just going to check. Have a well-protected pair. You know, he probably doesn't have a king too much. This is maybe a thin value spot, but it's obviously not ideal because there's a 4 straight out there. Facing the raise is not good. I think I'll just peel though. He could be bluffing sometimes, and we could sometimes fill up. Sometimes he could have like a jack-9 or something. If he fires a river, we'll just give it up because, you know, I believe him that he probably has a 10 at this stage. I don't think we need to be bluff catching here. He doesn't even look aggressive. He looks fairly passive overall. We actually have an aggression factor as well on the smart hard. I think it's his bottom left stat. And his aggression factor was 1 so far. I'm sure it takes time for that to converge, but it might be worth consulting that stat every so often. You know, if it's a close spot and you don't really know whether you should be leaning towards bluff catching or folding against a river bet, maybe that can give you a clue, can maybe tip you in one direction or the other. Of course, the best thing to do is to have something like a bet river as bluff stat, but obviously HUDs are not allowed here. It's pretty similar to GG Poker. I mean, you guys probably know the story. I don't know. I have a lifetime ban from GG Poker for having a VM running. Nothing to do with poker. It was just running in the background for something completely unrelated. But I got an instant lifetime ban without warning. We don't actually have to defend too deep the suited connectors against the 3-bets. So we can fold the 7-8 of hearts. We check because we have a dominated flush draw 3-way on table 2, but now we've turned the flush, we'll go for 2 streets of value. We don't need to use a large sizing at any point. King 4 is a 3-bet candidate, but not against the nit profile. It's probably not the right opponent for it. Might be a good overcall spot though. I think we will just play 3-way. We obviously get a good price and we can make second up flush or, you know, trips. I'll probably lead just because we have a recreational in, but you can play this as a check some of the time as well. I do mostly check in 3-bet pots now. I don't lead as aggressively as I used to, but I do still have a leading range. And it's going to be some of the vulnerable made hands, and then occasionally some strong hands, just so the leading range is not too exposed. But I'm going to be checking a lot to the PFR. Kind of makes sense that if you check a lot in heads up, probably going to check even more the more players you add into the scenario. Ace 10, I'll let it go. King 8, I'll let it go as well. Standard folds on both tables at this stage. There's still a limit to what we can play. You know, sometimes it might seem like we're playing pretty wide, but it's almost exclusively button and small blind type scenarios. Occasionally the cutoff, occasionally big blind cold call, but it's very specific areas where we're looking to expand beyond what theory would suggest. You're not going to see me open raise 10-8 offsuit from under the gun. So sometimes the hands I'm involved with might seem like they're wide, but it's a very specific scenario. Ten-9 is probably playable. Mix between 3-bet and call. I do like to do a decent amount of cold calling in position. It's something that I do more than most other players. King 6, not quite strong enough to 3-bet from cutoff versus MP. We do flop a pair on table 2. Obviously, it's not a very strong pair because there are 2 Broadways out there. In fact, it's the kind of hand that probably could raise against the sizing somewhat. It's bottom pair of the board. We have 2 pair trip outs. The man may not be clean. Against a 3-bet, it's a really easy fold. I don't feel like we've folded a massive equity share or anything. Realistically, we're probably crushed against his 3-bet range. That's fine. We get to figure out where he's at rather than just face a second barrel. Best outcome is a fold on the flop. We don't want him to call or anything like that. But if he does call, we have some 2-pair trip outs. The 10 would have been a bit questionable because it does complete some straights. A6, standard button open. We have reg and recreational in the blinds. And we're mostly saying this guy's recreational because of the short stack. It's not specifically to do with something that he's done. His VPIP, PFR, and ATS don't look bad or anything. This is a spot where we'll just fire small again for protection and then check back river. Actually, it could even be a spot. Maybe I even like mixing in some turn checks, bluff catch river or something like this. There's no need to bet super big on the turn because we're mostly targeting things like backdoor draws that didn't pick up equity. We just don't want them to be able to have their 12% equity going from turn to river. It's not like a value bet or anything. And we're not trying to fold out maybe something like pocket 8s he could have. We're just accepting that we're going to lose to that. King 7 maybe can just about make the cut as a 3-bet here. It's obviously one of our weaker 3-bets in this spot. Face a 4-bet, we will have some kind of falling range. I suppose this is fine for it. He's never 4-bet before. His ATS is very high though, and that does include RFI from the cutoff, so you do expect an above average amount of folds when someone has such a high ATS. But then, of course, even players who have a high ATS are sometimes going to have the premium. This is apparently an need to open at this spot on table 2. This guy's fairly tight, 2014 so far over 94 hands. So we're assuming that we have an above average profit on the open. We do get action this time. Jack 10 is an easy defend. We'll give this guy the green tag as well. I think we'll check the Jack 5 because it's a mid-range flush draw. We're obviously going to at least check call a flop unless villain sizes up. Looking to either hit, or we're targeting the turn pro bet line if we brick. Ten jack, we check call against a flop c-bet from the recreational opponent. Turn is an overcard to our pair, but it does also give us the OESD. We can't call two streets with the jack of diamonds, so we'll just give up against a second barrel. We should probably call again on table 1 because we have the OESD to Broadway, and we still have a pair, which could be good. Maybe not good most of the time, but some of the time it could be good. So we're just hoping river goes check, check. We're not going to do anything fancy here. All right, let's just play up these two hands. Queen 8. Yeah, let's see if we can target the recreational and the big blind. This is a kind of board texture where you could have an overbet range, especially good with the king queen, I guess. You know what? Let's overbet anyway. Recreational profile. I don't think he has king queen too much. Maybe most common is like 75 because we could still lose to king 8 or something like that. So king queen is probably a better overbet than queen 8, I guess. All right, that was part 2 of Streets Ahead. Catch you guys in the next part of the series.